Have you ever felt that the more you try to control something, the more it slips out of your reach? As if life made a point of challenging you, showing that true strength lies in knowing how to let go. The reality is that we live trapped in limiting beliefs, fears, and mental patterns that make us believe that we will only be happy when we have everything under control. But what if true freedom lies precisely in surrender, in letting go? Imagine living without the constant need to hold the reins of everything, without the anxiety of ensuring that every detail goes as planned. The secret is not in resistance, but in trusting the flow of life. Paradoxically, when we let go, success manifests itself more naturally. But how to let go without feeling lost? How can you trust the process without fear of losing everything? This is the invitation of this guide. Understand attachment as an act of empowerment and not weakness. Let's explore how letting go of the need for control can lead you to a state of abundance, freedom, and happiness in the present. If you feel like you're fighting against the current, perhaps it's time to stop resisting and allow life to flow in your favor. Many people confuse surrender with giving up, but the truth is that it is an act of trust. Surrender is not weakness, but rather a conscious positioning of stopping fighting the current and allowing things to flow. The problem is that we grew up with the idea that control is synonymous with security, and letting go seems like a risk. But ironically, the more we try to hold on, the more we create resistance, and this resistance prevents what we desire from actually manifesting. The great secret of surrender is trusting the flow of life without the need to predict every detail along the way. This does not mean passivity, but rather acting without attachment to the result. Imagine someone planting a seed and, every day, digging in the ground to see if it is growing. This only disrupts the natural process. When we let go of the need to guarantee everything, we create space for the universe to surprise us in ways we would never have imagined. But how to let go in practice? The first step is to develop self-awareness and identify where we are holding on to out of fear. It could be a relationship, a job, a specific expectation of financial success. Ask yourself, does this really make me feel good, or am I just afraid of missing out? The simple act of questioning begins to dissolve resistance. When we understand that life happens in the present and not in control of the future, we begin to experience genuine freedom. Control is an illusion that makes us feel safe, but in reality, it limits our potential. When we try to command every detail of life, we create tension and anxiety, because the truth is that we don't have control over everything. The paradox is that the more we strive to control, the further we move away from the state of flow, that space where things happen naturally and without forced effort. Magic happens when we trust the process and allow life to lead us in the right direction. Being in the flow does not mean that we have no choices or responsibility, but rather that we are aligned with our essence and act without resistance. Think of a surfer. He doesn't control the sea, but he learns to read the waves and move with them, using their energy to his advantage. In life, the principle is the same. When we are aligned with our true values and desires, we make more natural and intuitive decisions, without needing to force results. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that we can only achieve something if there is struggle and sacrifice. This mentality makes us act out of obligation rather than inspiration. The transition to flow begins when we change this belief and start to trust more in our ability to adapt. What would happen if, instead of trying to control everything, you just did your best and left space for life to do its part too? Success comes not from blind effort, but from harmony between action and delivery. Resistance is an automatic mechanism of the mind, the result of years of conditioning. From an early age, we learn to hold on to what is familiar, even if it causes us suffering. The problem is that the more we resist change, the more we become trapped in mental patterns that limit us. If you've ever tried to transform some aspect of your life and felt an internal force pulling you back, know that this is natural. The question is, will you keep fighting it or learn to let go? The first step to releasing resistance is recognizing that it exists. Whenever you feel tense about a change, ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of losing? Often, the fear is not in the change itself, but in the loss of identity associated with the old pattern. If you believe that you need to work hard to be worthy of financial success, for example, it will be difficult to accept that money can come more easily and naturally. Our mind clings to suffering because it is familiar to us. To transform this cycle, it is necessary to train self-awareness and challenge limiting beliefs. Meditation, journaling, and mental reprogramming techniques are powerful tools for weakening old patterns and creating new references. Instead of resisting, try asking yourself, what if it were easy? What if I could just allow change to happen? The simple act of questioning already opens space for a new reality. When you learn to let go, you discover that life can be lighter than you imagined. Our mind is a reflection of the habits and patterns we have reinforced over time. If you believe that certain things are difficult or inaccessible, that belief becomes a filter for your reality. Often, it's not life that limits us, but the stories we tell ourselves. If we grow up hearing that money is scarce, that complete happiness does not exist, or that success requires suffering, we internalize these ideas and start to recreate them in our daily lives, without even realizing it. The good news is that any pattern can be reprogrammed. Just as we learn to ride a bike or drive, we can train our minds to operate under new beliefs. The first step is to identify the habits that reinforce our limited view of the world. Do you surround yourself with people who are always complaining about life? Do you consume content that reinforces scarcity and pessimism? Pay attention to the stimuli that feed your mind. Transformation begins when we exchange old patterns for more positive and inspiring references. Creating new mental habits requires repetition and intention. Techniques like daily affirmations, visualization, and cognitive restructuring help shape a new mindset. For example, instead of repeating "I never have enough money," try replacing it with "I'm learning to manage my finances with more intelligence and confidence." It sounds simple, but small shifts in thinking have profound impacts on how we feel and act. In the end, your reality will always be a reflection of what you believe is possible. Living a life that doesn't reflect who you really are can be exhausting. Many people spend years following a script they didn't write, trying to fit into social, professional, or family standards. But this disconnect comes at a price: anxiety, dissatisfaction, and a nagging feeling that something is missing. The further we move away from our authenticity, the harder it becomes to maintain this facade. The effort to be who we are not ends up consuming our vital energy. The body and mind always give signals when we are living out of alignment. It could be that feeling of constant exhaustion, the discouragement when waking up in the morning, or the irritation that appears for no apparent reason. These symptoms are not isolated problems, but reflections of a life that does not belong to us. And no matter how much we try to compensate with momentary pleasures, shopping, distractions, excesses, none of this fills the void of not living our own truth. The solution: having the courage to ask yourself, who am I really? And what makes sense to me? The fear of change can be great, but in the long run, maintaining an inauthentic life is much more difficult than embracing the unknown. Small steps towards authenticity already bring relief. Could be expressing your opinions without fear, saying no when necessary, or simply accepting that you don't need to please everyone. Freedom begins when we allow ourselves to be who we really are. Pleasing others may seem like an act of kindness, but when it becomes a pattern, it can be a heavy emotional burden. People who live to meet other people's expectations often ignore their own needs, accumulating frustration and resentment. The problem is that this behavior doesn't come out of nowhere, it is learned from childhood. When we are rewarded for being good children and avoid conflicts to maintain harmony, what starts as a protection mechanism ends up becoming a prison. The biggest challenge for people pleasers is the difficulty of expressing their true feelings and establishing healthy limits. The fear of confrontation and rejection leads them to accept situations that are not good for them, just to maintain the appearance of being a nice person. But this need for approval comes at a cost: anxiety, low self-esteem, and the constant feeling of always being overwhelmed. The question is it worth sacrificing your own identity to be accepted by others? The way out of this cycle is self-worth and strengthening your own identity. This starts with small actions, like saying no without guilt, allowing yourself to have your own opinions, and prioritizing yourself without fear of disappointing someone. Learning to differentiate generosity from self-effacement is essential. You can be an empathetic and supportive person without having to give up on yourself. In the end, those who really like you will respect your authenticity, not your submissiveness. That abundance and success are not the result of excessive effort, but rather of a state of being. When something becomes natural to you, it manifests more easily. The problem is that many people put their goals on a pedestal, creating a mental barrier between where they are and where they would like to be. This distance generates anxiety and reinforces the belief that achieving what you want is difficult. But what if the path to success is precisely to make this new reality familiar and comfortable? Think of someone who attracts money easily. This person does not see wealth as something distant, but as part of their identity. If you still feel like you need to fight to achieve your goals, It may be that, internally, you still don't see yourself as someone who deserves them. The key is to change this perception, adjusting your vibration to align with what you want. This means acting and thinking as if you were already in the reality you want to live in, without placing happiness in an uncertain future. The secret is to feel worthy now. If you want more abundance, start behaving like someone who trusts in the prosperity of life. If you want success, act with the mentality of someone who has already won. This is not pretending or forcing something unrealistic, but rather adjusting your identity so that success comes naturally. When you stop desperately searching and start feeling comfortable with what you want, everything starts to flow with less effort and more authenticity. Many people go through life believing that they will only be happy when they achieve something specific, a perfect relationship, a certain amount in their bank account, or a dream job. But this mentality creates a trap, as there will always be a next goal to be achieved. Happiness becomes a prize that never arrives, because it is always tied to something external. The problem is not in wanting to evolve, but in conditioning peace and fulfillment to an uncertain future. The secret to a fulfilling life is learning to find happiness in the present, regardless of the circumstances. This doesn't mean giving up on your dreams, but rather stopping living in the expectation that something external will complete you. True abundance comes when we can feel gratitude for what we already have, while moving toward what we want. When you are satisfied now, the journey becomes lighter and success comes more naturally. Think about people who have achieved everything they wanted and yet still feel empty. This happens because happiness is not in the new car, money, or status. It is in the way we live our daily lives. If you don't learn to be happy along the way, it's unlikely you'll be happy when you arrive. What can you do today to find joy in the present? Small moments of gratitude, pleasure, and presence make all the difference. When you stop chasing happiness, you realize that it has always been within your reach. Many people believe that they will only be truly free when they pay off all their debts. This thinking creates a feeling of imprisonment and makes life seem like an eternal race to eliminate financial problems before starting to live. But what happens when that goal is achieved? If the scarcity mentality is not transformed, new concerns will arise, and the feeling of freedom will continue to be pushed into the future. Financial freedom needs to be felt in the present, regardless of the current situation. The secret is to change your relationship with money. Instead of seeing debts as an unbearable burden, how about seeing them as part of the growth process? Many people go into debt to invest in something important: education, a business, a property. This does not mean that finances should be neglected, but that a mentality of guilt and despair only makes the situation worse. Instead of focusing on the problem, focus on developing financial intelligence and habits that create a new reality. True financial freedom comes when we stop seeing money as an enemy and start seeing it as a tool. Practicing gratitude for what you already have, learning to manage resources strategically, and creating sources of income aligned with your identity are fundamental steps. When you start to feel prosperous now, rather than waiting to feel good after everything is sorted out, your vibration changes and money flows more naturally into your life. Many people put off trusting themselves, believing that they can only feel secure after they achieve something specific. When I have more money, I will be more confident. When I lose weight, I will feel good about myself. But this thought keeps self-confidence always in the future, as if it depended on an external event to exist. The reality is that confidence does not come after achievement, it needs to come before. Is the internal state of believing in yourself that paves the way for external changes to happen. Self-confidence is built when you allow yourself to act now like the person you want to become. Do you want to be someone more prosperous? Start thinking and making decisions like someone who already trusts your financial ability. Want to be more charismatic? Practice expressing yourself authentically in the present, without waiting for an ideal moment. The energy of being is much more powerful than the energy of wanting. When you already see yourself as someone capable and complete, life responds to this vibration. Being present in the current moment is essential to strengthening this trust. When we live stuck in the past or anxious about the future, we waste the only thing we really have: the now. Ask yourself, what can I do today that will bring me closer to the person I want to be? Small daily attitudes build a solid foundation of inner security. Self-confidence doesn't come from waiting for something to happen. It comes from the moment you choose to live with presence and courage. Many people focus so much on when something will happen that they end up keeping their desires always in the future. Manifestation is not just desiring intensely, but aligning your vibration with what you want to experience. If you believe something is far away, your reality will continue to reflect that distance. The secret is to bring the desire to the present, feeling part of this new reality even before it manifests itself physically. Imagine someone who wants to attract more money, but spends all day reinforcing the idea that they are always without resources. This mentality keeps scarcity active, because the person still vibrates in lack. Instead, the focus should be on acting like someone who already has a healthy relationship with money, making more conscious decisions, appreciating what you already have, and feeling worthy of prosperity. The materialization time depends on how much you align with your New identity. The most common mistake in manifestation is obsessing over the how and when. This attachment creates resistance and prevents things from flowing naturally. The best way to accelerate materialization is to let go of the need for control and trust that the universe has infinite ways to deliver what you want. Ask yourself, am I vibrating at the frequency I want or lack thereof? When you truly align with your new reality, it will inevitably manifest. The many spiritual approaches end up reinforcing the idea that some people are more evolved than others, creating a kind of hierarchy within their own path of awakening. This creates a paradox. While spirituality should bring connection and freedom, it often becomes yet another form of separation and judgment. Some people enter this journey seeking growth, but end up clinging to rigid rules, as if there was a right path and only one for evolution. True awakening is not about accumulating spiritual knowledge or following specific dogmas, but rather about developing a genuine connection with yourself and life. It's not about how many esoteric books you've read or how many advanced practices you've mastered, but about how you apply this knowledge in your everyday life. Spirituality should not be a competition or a status of superiority. On the contrary, it should be a means of finding more authenticity and lightness. It is important to question and free yourself from the need for approval within any spiritual system. Personal development should serve as a path to empowerment, not as another form of dependence. In the end, true spirituality is one that makes sense to you, without needing validation from gurus, masters, or external rules. The essential question is, does this bring me more freedom or more imprisonment? If the answer is the second option, maybe it's time to let go and find your own truth. Many people dream of winning the lottery, believing that it would solve all their problems, but the truth is that sudden wealth does not guarantee financial stability or lasting happiness. Proof of this is the large number of winners who lose everything in a few years, because they still operate in the same scarcity mentality. Money amplifies who you already are. If you are afraid of losing it, insecure or unprepared, your financial reality will continue to reflect this, regardless of the amount you receive. The true desire for abundance goes beyond money itself. It's about feeling safe, free, and in control of your own life. If you believe that you will only be happy when you have a large amount in your account, you may be projecting the solution to unresolved internal issues onto money. Real abundance begins with the right mindset, knowing how to manage resources, trusting your ability to generate value, and, most importantly, feeling worthy of prosperity before it arrives, instead of waiting for a lucky break. Ask yourself, what habits and beliefs do I need to change to live more abundantly now? Small adjustments, such as taking better care of your money, valuing your skills, and opening yourself up to new opportunities, make all the difference. Sustainable wealth does not come from an isolated event, but from a state of being. When you learn to vibrate in the energy of prosperity, you realize that success is not in the lottery, it is within you. That money carries a strong emotional weight, especially in family relationships. Often, when someone begins to prosper financially, implicit expectations arise that they should help others. While helping is a noble act, it can quickly turn into a burden when done out of obligation. Feeling responsible for the financial well-being of friends and family can lead to guilt, resentment, and even self-sabotage. It is essential to understand that your abundance does not have to be a source of exhaustion. Creating healthy boundaries is essential. Saying no may be difficult at first, but allowing people to take responsibility for their own lives is an act of empowerment, not selfishness. Helping someone financially is only really positive when it encourages growth and autonomy, not dependence. Instead of simply giving money, consider sharing financial knowledge, encouraging skill development, or supporting the creation of new opportunities. This generates a much greater and sustainable impact. Ask yourself, is this help strengthening or weakening this person in the long run? Often, the best way to support someone is not by meeting an immediate need, but by helping to transform the mindset that created that situation. True financial freedom involves not only creating wealth, but also knowing how to manage it without bearing responsibility for others. When you learn to balance generosity and self-worth, your relationship with money becomes lighter and more prosperous. The attraction to conspiracy theories often arises from the human need to find meaning in chaos. In a world where so many things seem out of our control, it's tempting to believe that there are hidden forces manipulating everything. This gives us a false sense of security, because if we can identify a villain, then we believe we have an explanation for our challenges. The problem is that these beliefs often put us in a cycle of paranoia, victimism, and disconnection from reality. Doesn't mean we should accept everything without question, but it's important to balance discernment and personal responsibility. When someone starts to see conspiracies in everything, they lose focus on what can really change in their life. Instead of spending energy fearing an invisible system that supposedly controls everything, why not direct it towards developing skills, creating new opportunities, and strengthening your autonomy? True power lies in assuming your own reality, and not in feeling powerless in the face of it. Ask yourself, is this belief empowering me or just making me feel afraid and helpless? The search for meaning is natural, but it doesn't need to imprison us. Expanding consciousness involves questioning narratives without getting lost in them. After all, what really matters is not who is behind everything, but how you choose to live your life. Regardless of external circumstances, empowerment begins when you realize that your reality is created much more by your decisions than by any hidden influence. Participating in personal development. Events and workshops can be a game changer for those seeking transformation. Being in an environment where the energy of change is strong can accelerate internal processes that, alone, would take years to happen. Contact with new perspectives, techniques and people who share the same purpose creates a field of possibilities that expands your vision of yourself and life. Often, a single idea or experience is enough to completely change the way we see our reality. However, it is important to remember that no technique, course or mentor can do the internal work for you. Many seek events hoping that a magic formula will solve their problems, but real change comes from the constant application of what has been learned. There's no point leaving inspired and motivated if, the next day, you return to the same old patterns. The secret is to absorb knowledge and transform it into action. Implementing small daily changes that, over time, create a new identity. In addition to in-person events, there are numerous accessible tools to deepen self-knowledge, such as books, podcasts and practices such as meditation and journaling. Mental transformation techniques, such as the frame technique, help to reprogram limiting patterns and create new internal references. True growth doesn't just happen in moments of great impact, but in the consistency of small daily practices. The question is, what can you start applying today to become the best version of yourself? The time has come to look at your life and ask yourself, what are you still holding on to that you should have let go of? Attachment to control, limiting beliefs and fear of change may be blocking the natural flow of things. True power is not in resistance, but in the ability to trust the process and act with presence. When you let go of the need to predict every detail and open up to the abundance of the present moment, you discover that life can be much lighter and more prosperous than you imagined. None of this means abdicating responsibility or leaving everything to chance. On the contrary, letting go is a conscious act of choosing what really matters and releasing what no longer serves. Success, financial freedom and happiness are not distant destinations, but states of being that you can access now. Transformation begins the moment you decide to align your energy with the reality you want to live. The question is, are you ready to let go and allow life to flow in your favor? If this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow more insights about personal development, abundance and spirituality. Share in the comments what resonated most with you and what change you intend to apply in your daily life. Your transformation journey starts now.